Welcome into the JP and Hack Show, part of the Field of 12 Media Network, sponsored as always by Bet Rivers Sportsbook. This is the CFP semifinal preview show. That's my guy, Christian Hackenberg. Got a little tan to him. He was out in the sun for a little while. I am merely Joshua Perry. Getting excited here. I'm down in Atlanta for the Peach Bowl. Hoping it's going to be a good football game. Hack, how you been?
I'm good, man. To your point, I did get a little sun, but then we got that frigid frost. I think it sucked a little bit of that tan out of me. That's part of the dues you got to pay. But yeah, man, I've been good, man. Enjoyed my holidays. How were your holidays?
It was good, man. I had a good time. It's just me and the wife. We were here. I guess not here, but we were in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Just the both of us had some sniffles over the holiday. So you know how it
Yep.
goes. When you become an adult, the magic kind of leaves the season a little bit, but it's always fun to be able to slow down for a little bit and connect.
No doubt. No doubt.
All right. So there are apparently some big football games coming up. Figured that we should have a little conversation about what's going on here. Big moment for the Big Ten Conference and the fact that there are two teams in the college football playoff. Obviously, you've got Michigan as the number 2 seed. They're facing off against TCU in the Fiesta Bowl. And then you've got Ohio State, who got in very last seed as the 4 seed, facing off against the number 1 Georgia Bulldogs. I'll start with the Fiesta Bowl game. That's the first one that we will get to consume on New Year's Eve. This Michigan team, their path to getting back to the playoff, I think was clear, but a lot of people didn't anticipate they would be able to do it. And let me explain what I'm getting at there. Is in the offseason, you have some coordinators making moves. Mike McDonald going back to the NFL with the Ravens. You had Josh Gaddis taking the OC job down in Miami, and they look like absolute garbage right now. And then you have Jim Harbaugh sniffing around at the NFL. It was rumored that the Vikings job was pretty much his, and then he went in for the interview. They had a little bit of a disagreement on some philosophical things, and he ends up being the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines again this year. Then you go through with JJ McCarthy being banged up in spring practice. He can't really get reps. Cade McNamara is their number 1 quarterback going in. Then a week before the season, you get the tweet saying that we got 2 starting quarterbacks. And Cade's going to get the first crack at it, but JJ McCarthy is going to play. And he's going to start in the couple of the early games, and we'll see what happens from there. JJ McCarthy takes control of that job. You flip it over to the defensive side of the ball. They had some first rounders on that defense. Obviously, Hutchinson. You got Dax Hill in the secondary. David Ojabo would have been a first rounder had he not gotten busted up at his pro day. And some other veteran guys that left that defense and a new coordinator. Regardless, you knew what this team was because of what they did a year ago. Started off as an unranked team, made it to the playoff. And a lot of people still doubted their ability to get the job done this year. Just from a 30,000-foot view, what do you make of the season that Michigan had?
Well, I think it's the season they needed to have, right? You set a standard last year, and at a school like Michigan, the expectations where Jim Harbaugh's, you think about where Jim Harbaugh's job security was last year. And I made the argument that this may have been the most important year. I said it last year. Last year was the most important year for Jim Harbaugh, but this year moving forward for him. And I say that meaning it, but also the one game at a time, 1 year at a time mentality. But when you're at a place like that with the expectations, the leash that he had and ultimately what was produced on the football field at the beginning half of his tenure was not up to their standards. And that's why I think the job he did this year, the job that team did this year, was very commendable and ultimately what they needed as a program to continue to take the right steps forward.
No doubt. I mean, you think about the narrative on Jim Harbaugh, and it felt like coming out of that COVID year, man, that he was done. He had to take a pay cut, and COVID year wasn't very good. And a large reason why is because he hadn't beaten his rival, and the bowl game record was not good for Jim Harbaugh. And he totally flipped the script now, winning 2 in a row against Ohio State and making it to the playoffs 2 years in a row. And getting into this game specifically, it seems like this is the matchup that we would feel most certain about, is that Michigan is going to win their semifinal out there in the desert. We'll do it when Michigan has the ball, when TCU has the ball. So starting off, when Michigan has the football, one of the things that I think can happen in this football game is I think they can win it just running the ball. It's what Michigan has done. It's what they built their program on. They've got the best offensive line in the country. Donovan Edwards has showed us that even when Blake Corum's not in the game, that this is going to be an offense that uh, we know is going to be productive on the ground. But what I think would make this game a lot easier for them, and where this game can become a true blowout, is if Michigan can throw the football the way they did the last two times we saw them. Against Ohio State, hit the explosives. Against Purdue, not only explosives, but some precision passing out of J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah.
This is one of those opportunities where, you get a Ronnie Bell, you get a Cornelius Johnson, Colston Loveland, who I think the world of, the young tight end. You get those guys loose, and they hit a couple of big ones, and we might be looking up, and that scoreboard might not have a close score on it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll stick to the script here. I think Michigan doesn't have to be anything more than who they have been. I think that this matchup in particular is what they wanted, and I think is what this team needs, especially with a young kid at quarterback who has played in some big games, but in the grand scheme of things, comparing him to the other guys and comparing his resume to the other guys hasn't really. And being able to come in, get your feet wet against a team that, like you said, you should most likely dominate on the line of scrimmage, and take that load off of JJ for sure. But this is a point I made last night on our show. At some point in time, and again, I said it. I wasn't, and it's not against JJ. And I keep saying this. It's not against JJ. He's doing what he's being asked to do, and ultimately he's winning football games. So you can never knock a quarterback for that, right? I mean, quarterbacks. The biggest stat that matters is W's and L's for them. So, he's done what he needed to do from that standpoint. But his maturity, and I said it from a 5,000-foot view, big picture, right? I almost compare him to Stetson Bennett, right? They both play in systems that are very, very quarterback friendly, from the sense that they're going to be able to run the football. They're going to have a very physical, tough defense on the other side of the ball. It's going to take it away, give you chances on some short fields, and the air quotes game manager label can very easily get slapped on somebody there, right? But at the end of the day, for me, that's a beautiful thing, because you're managing the game, and ultimately, if you want to win and lose football games, you have to manage the football game. You know what I mean? You can't sit there and be an explosive guy who's out there, freelancing, gunslinging. You can, but maybe it's not as sexy. But JJ's growth and maturity, I think, is going to be very similar to Stetson's, but I think he obviously has more tools than Stetson Bennett, God-given ability than Stetson Bennett, right? So I think his maturity needs to accelerate a little bit, especially with the opportunity to possibly face Georgia or an Ohio State team again in the national championship game if they get past this TCU team. And he's going to need to make more plays, more game-defining plays than he's ever had in a game like that. So for me, it's about just putting JJ in some situations, like I said, not being anything who they haven't been, and really relying on what got them there.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I think throughout the season we've always had that question lingering in the back of our minds: is when are they 100% going to unleash JJ McCarthy? Like, when is this Michigan staff going to say go out there and just wreak havoc, just break the game? Because we know that he can do that. We know there is that ability. And to me, there's no better time than right now, where you're playing for all the marbles. You lose this week, it's not like you get to go back out there next week and make the adjustments, make the corrections. Like, you're one and done in this one if you don't win. So yeah, it's a really unique spot, because I think that as a defense, TCU has to prepare. Like, JJ McCarthy is going to come out there fully unleashed, and that takes a lot out of you during your prep to have to focus on that. But at the same time, like, you got to be ready for it, because I think we're all expecting at some point we're going to see it.
And here's the thing is you can't blame the kid or even the coaching staff for not being something that they aren't. Like, their DNA is not that. And they've been adamant about it, and they've shown it with the accolades that offensive line have reeled in for 2 years now.
Sure.
And the product they've put on the field, right? So you can't, we've been living in this world of hypotheticals, like, when are they going to unleash him? They haven't had to, right? And if you're winning games that way, why?
That's the biggest thing.
Why do that, right?
Yeah. You know how it goes when you get in that locker room and you get in that winning groove. Not a lot of adjustments need to be made. Even if you have the ability to do it, you don't have to, just because. And so I think that is a big part of it. And you're right. Like, you can't. This is not a point fingers or blame. It's just a question of, like, what is that top end like when it actually does happen?
And that's where I said his growth is very similar to Stetson's, right? Like we had the same questions about him last year, and then in the college football playoff, he pops off, and then he wins a few games single-handedly this year by himself. I'm not going to say by himself, but big time, big game, Heisman type performances, right?
No doubt.
Um, so you're talking about a growth and maturity there where he wasn't necessarily put in those positions by the scheme or by the coaches intentionally being something that they weren't. They just kind of came naturally, and he took advantage of them, and he grew from them, and he added them as like notches to his belt and another layer of armor for him. So for JJ, those opportunities really haven't come in mass yet. They're going to, and he's going to need to turn them in the right way and ultimately go out and win some football games when his number's called, right? And I think that's ultimately why the Michigan staff went with JJ McCarthy is the top end in terms of ability to do that was
Right.
there even more so than Cade McNamara.
Yeah, and JJ's the type of guy that can get you out of trouble too when things start to break down, which you really appreciate. Flip it over to the other side. When TCU has the ball, the one thing that I'm looking at is I think we all got a really close look in at Max Duggan in the Big 12 championship game. That guy is a freaking fighter. I mean,
Straight up
literally,
warrior, dude.
yes, to the very end of the game. I was shocked he didn't get a chance to win it himself, keep the ball in his hands in that situation. Yep. That's neither here nor there. And then looking at his post-game press conference after that one, the emotion that he displayed, like this guy, those are the types of guys that you can't just count out. Like as confident as we feel, and Michigan is favored by 7.5 points in this football game. As confident as we feel about Michigan to win this game, when you have a guy like Duggan playing quarterback, you simply cannot count a team out. The other thing that I think I'm not going to say nobody, people are not talking about enough with this TCU offense is they want to go out there with balance. And I think that's important. They have a wide receiver in Quentin Johnston, who is going to be a first-round pick. This man is 6'4", 210 pounds. He's got speed. He's got range. He's got great ball skills. He is going to be a handful. And where this TCU offense has been extremely explosive is Duggan drops back and he puts that thing up in the air like a rainbow, and Johnson's got an opportunity to go up and get the football. Michigan has to have answers for that. And I think the easiest way to combat that connection is through the defensive line. Get
100%.
Pressure on the quarterback so you can disrupt that.
100%. And it's not even just him for TCU. That wide receiver room is very deep. They have a lot of guys, different play styles that present a lot of different matchup issues, right? And that's what they've leaned on. And, you talk about slow starts. Both these teams have showed slow starts. So I think for TCU specifically, they need to be hoping that Michigan starts a little slow, a little rusty, a little groggy on offense. And they need to come out firing on all cylinders. And whether it's mixing in some good quick game, mixing in some screen game early, confuse that D-line, right? And you need to take advantage of the opportunities when they get there. George Whitfield asked me this question last night. He said, does TCU need to empty the bag? I think they do, but do it smartly, right? Like there's going to be times where they need to take chances, but they can't make self-inflicted errors that take them out of the football game. So you have to have a fine balance of doing that, because ultimately they're a really good football team. They're in the college football playoff. They've won a lot of tough games against a lot of tough teams, and they can rely on that. They have a backbone too. All four of these teams have a backbone. They have an identity. They know who they are. It's just who knows how to take that, take the strengths out of it, maximize those, hide the weaknesses the best. And that's where I'm looking to see this TCU team. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of questions physically. I think defensively, though, I want to see if they can force Michigan's offense to put JJ McCarthy in those growth opportunistic situations, like I said, consistently. And if he can consistently answer the bell, I don't want to get beat by explosive 80-yard runs. I want to get beat by JJ McCarthy and not, let's go zero all out. Like I want JJ McCarthy to dice me up for 4 quarters consistently. If he does, tip the cap, shake hands. You got us. You were better than us. But that's what I'm going to be paying more attention to, because I honestly, like you said, I'm not worried about TCU's offense as long as 15's on the football field. He's a flat out warrior. The type of guy, like you said, that can rally a locker room. Guys are going to play for him. He's going to elevate everyone's play around him simply by his presence, demeanor, and attitude and play. So as long as he's on that football field, the offense, I think, has a chance. Defensively, though, is where I want to see TCU make some strides and make a statement.
No doubt. And this is going to be a fun football game if we get the top end of either one of these teams. And
Yeah.
it's been the question because Michigan is comfortable. They're comfortable winning in a slog. They're also comfortable winning in a blowout. Doesn't matter for them. TCU, you don't know what you're going to get early from them, but you know you're going to get a fight in the second half. This one certainly got some intrigue that I feel like on paper you're like, yeah, this should be an easy dub for Michigan, but
Yeah.
this one's got a lot more intrigue than that, I believe. Flip it over to the other semifinal being played in Atlanta at the Peach Bowl. Number 1 Georgia has the number 4 Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio State getting here was not a shock. I think the way that they got here absolutely was by the end of the year. Defense had made strides all year long. You got CJ Stroud coming back. Dude played well, as he typically does throughout the year. Jackson Smith and Jigba was down. It didn't matter. You get Marvin Harrison Jr. playing out of his mind. Emeka Ibuka doing his thing. Run game was up and down throughout the year. But then you get to the Michigan game, and that's kind of where the wheels fell off, both mentally and physically for this football team. And now they got a second chance at it. And I was at Media Days earlier this week. And from talking to the team, the things that you hear, nobody believes that we can do it. We got nothing to lose in this football game. They don't think we belong here. Nobody's picking us to win. And I'll say just off the mentality, it's a really dangerous place for a team to be because when you feel counted out and destitute and like you don't have anything to lose with that amount of talent and you put together a game plan like you don't have anything to lose, that is dangerous.
It's very dangerous, and that's a point that I made as well, and I continue to make. I saw a graphic about Ohio State's talent in terms of stars.
Yep.
They're right there with Georgia. They're a top 3 roster in the country, top 4 roster in the country as it pertains to straight up talent. What separates the Ohio States from the others, in my opinion, is the way they develop that talent and the way that the culture forces that talent to get on the bus or get up out of there. And they don't miss often with these guys. You don't accrue that much talent. You don't have guys in waiting without a very sturdy culture. And like you said, this isn't a fucking chihuahua backed in the corner. This is a full-fledged thoroughbred gorilla, silverback gorilla backed into a corner. Yeah. And when you piss that off top to bottom, it's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. And that's why I'm really intrigued, man. I picked these guys to win the national championship early in the year. I picked these guys to beat Georgia last night, and I fully expect this to be an absolute slugfest. Probably the best college football game of the year, in my opinion, if Ohio State comes out and plays the way that I think they're going to. Yeah. And it's I think it's something that us as college football fans really need to sit back, analyze it from that angle, and enjoy it.
No doubt. And I've got that graphic pulled up that you were talking about. Georgia is number 2 nationally in terms of team talent. 15 5-stars, 53 4-stars, 17 3-stars. Ohio State is number 3 overall in terms of total roster talent. They've got 14 5-stars, so one less 5-star. They've got 52 4-stars, so one less 4-star, and they've got 16 3-stars, so one less 3-star. Like these are evenly matched teams as you start to dig into the talent. And I think that's an important factor that a lot of people, the way that they talk about this game, just because of what happened to Ohio State against Michigan, is they've removed that element of, okay, well, what happens if you get it right with talent that is equated to Georgia, because we're so used to talking about Georgia in a way that they're matching up with teams that aren't nearly as talented as them. So yeah, it'll certainly be interesting. I think the mental edge plays a huge part in this one too. I try to obviously take my Ohio State glasses off and look at this critically. And there are challenges everywhere on the football field for either side of this game. Like I look at Georgia's secondary, and I think that they are great but not elite. And I think Ohio State's got an elite pass game. So is there an advantage there? I look at Georgia's front though, and I say Ohio State ain't gonna have an easy day trying to run the football into the teeth of that defense. I look at Ohio State's defense and I say, okay, 90% of what I viewed this year was really good defense. It was 10% god awful. But when I look at the body of work that Georgia's put together on offense, where are the great defenses that they played this year? They
Yeah.
played Kentucky, who's top 25 defense, and they struggled in that game. Missouri's got a top 35 defense or something like that, and they struggled in that football game. But largely, they played average defenses for a lot of the year, and so I think that there's a balancing out that happens for either team. Where Ohio State's going to have opportunities, but I think it's going to be a little bit one-dimensional. They're probably not going to look like the number 2 scoring offense for a majority of that football game because they're playing a great Georgia defense. I also think that Georgia is going to feel more resistance in this football game than they have felt in a long time when they have the football as well. Yep. And that's where I think the beauty of this game comes out is when you put these top dogs in an arena and you unleash them, you are going to hopefully see a football game that is like, man, it's not going to be fireworks everywhere, and hopefully it's not going to be lopsided. Like, you're going to see a legitimate fight here, and I think that's the beauty in having a matchup like this.
And that's where you said that edge, right? You got one team that's been eating straight Purina Gold Blend, and then you got another team that's been eating fucking JOR PB&Js, right? For the past since the Michigan game. So to your point, you got equal beasts. One's hungry and one probably is hungry, but probably isn't as hungry as the other, right? The one thing I want to ask you though, because I thought about this as well, right? When you look at Ohio State, defensively, what's killed them has been piss poor tackling and taking chances.
Yes.
Taking chances. And you said it's part of Jim Knowles' DNA. You and I've talked about this before. Do you think that Ohio State is going to look at that, understanding what they have offensively and understanding that this is a win or go home situation and they have a very, very good opportunity in front of them? Do you think that they're going to dial that back a little bit, or do you think that they're going to live and die by the sword of Jim Knowles' philosophy?
See, Jim Knowles is a gambler as a play caller, but I think it's got to be fully calculated in this football game. And there's no shot that he's not going to be aggressive, but I think the aggression has to come in the right spots. And then when you dial it up, this is not to point fingers at Jim Knowles, not to point fingers at players, but like when coach dials it up, like if you're a safety and or a corner, you know that you got no help over the top, and they dial up a blitz and they throw it out to your man, basketball him, you body position him, give a little time for pursuit. But the last thing that you can do is miss a tackle and, guys getting a free run at the end zone. That's a really tough spot to be in. So I think that the game plan stays aggressive just because I think that's who Jim Knowles is. I'd like to see a little bit more of a calculated approach to it. Like on a 3rd and 7, I don't think you need to run all out. You can blitz, like that's perfectly fine, but running zero coverage on 3rd and 7 to me is a fool's errand because that's not the situation where you need to be all out.
That's a great point, because when you watch them and you watch these games and you go back and you look at the situations that some of those chances and those rolls of the dice came, they very easily could have held it and said, you know what, hey, let's play coverage here. Let's see what they can do. And on first down, they're a heavy run team. Let's dial something up and try and get them behind the sticks, right? Or something like that. There's ways where you can do it. And obviously, like you said, there's that gut feeling on those 3rd and 4s where, hey, maybe they got something dialed up here where they're looking to take a shot. Let's go after them here. You know what I mean? So you have to have that fine balance. And it's really interesting to me. And I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to that because I know it's counterintuitive, but I gotta wonder if Ryan Day's been in Jim Knowles' ear during this entirely too long amount of time for them to prepare. You know how coaches are and how neurotic they can get. If he hasn't been in their ear just about that timing and really feeling something before you just fire from the hip with the 6-shooter. You know what I mean?
No doubt.
Because ultimately, I think that's what cost them in a few of these games, and specifically the Michigan game. Right? Let's just cut through the bullshit there. 5 plays totaling like 300 something yards. You can't have it.
349.
So, yep.
Yeah, it's that's it for me. Is the chance has to be the right one.
Right.
You know, if you can say, listen, you know, if they throw it for 7 yards on 3rd and 7 from their own 35, like, all right, well, let's play football. Because
Mm-hmm.
my thought process is, after watching tape of Ohio State this year, teams aren't just driving the football down the field. They're not taking long 7-minute drives. Like, I think Michigan put one of those super long drives together the whole football game. Like, the formula to beating Ohio State isn't let's drive the football field. It's okay, when they dial that thing up, we got to cash in on it. So very curious about how that's going to play out. All right. Want to get out of here because we want to keep this one short, but we got to do predictions because that's what everybody fucking does on these shows. So, Hack, I'm a tee you up here. The Fiesta Bowl semifinal, number 3 TCU versus number 2 Michigan. Give me your prediction.
Yeah, I got Michigan winning this one. Like I said, I think this game could, if the stars align and TCU comes out hot, and I think Michigan has to put a little WD-40 in the bearings there to start the game off. I think it's close for till halftime, but ultimately I think Michigan ends up pulling this out, and winning by, at least 2 scores.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I just think that leaning on them physically, wear them down. In a manner that this TCU team really hasn't seen. There hasn't really been a comp all year for them in terms of what they're going to see, from a physicality standpoint.
Yep, I'm going 38-28 in this affair. Totally with you. I think that this is a typical Michigan style game. You know, they're gonna, I don't want to say feel their way through, because I don't ever think they really feel their way through, but they're just gonna develop their game plan. And by the end of it, they're
Yeah.
gonna end up blowing the thing out by a couple of scores. It's what they've done all year. Let's call it game plan development,
Yeah.
because I
I
can't
like that.
hardly say they're feeling their way through the game. It's exactly what they want to do.
Mhm.
And the patience that they have, I think, is such a beautiful thing, because you don't see it in college football. All right, flip it to the Peach Bowl. You've got number 4 Ohio State against number 1 Georgia. Give me the prediction there.
Yeah, man. Both great defenses. I still think that there's going to be some points scored because of the Jimmies and Joes on both sides of this ball, on both sides of the offensive sides for both these teams. Geez, that was a fucking word salad. But ultimately, I'm going to stick to my guns here. I'm going to stick to what I've been doing. I think Ohio State pulls this one off. I'm sure this one's going to bite me in the ass, but I think Ohio State pulls this one off by 3. And I think last night I was 38-35, something like that. I think
Okay.
that's ultimately where I see it. I think Ohio State gets this one done, and I give the people what they want: the game 2.0.
All right. I would love to see the game 2.0. My prediction is going to be very similar to yours. I have personal experience being that Big Ten team who was a 4 seed going down into the South to play a semifinal in a game where a lot of people said you can't get the job done. And it it pisses you off to a point of frustration, to where you have to go out and you have to do it. Like, you don't have another choice. And I think Ohio State feels like that right now. There's not another choice except for to go out there and execute the game plan. My score prediction is 35-31 in favor of Ohio State. I'd love to see the rematch in the national title game. I would piss my pants with excitement if that were the case. Like, New Year's Eve, the Peach Bowl ends. We already have the Michigan outcome, and we're sitting there watching the confetti fall, and it's Ohio State up there on that platform. I would literally piss my pants. Like, I might have
Yeah,
to go and get some Depends to make sure that I can protect myself for that situation.
yeah,
But regardless of the outcomes of these games, I'm expecting them to be super exciting, and it's going to be a lot of fun covering this bad boy.
yeah. The SEC folks are going to be over there just, yeah, hey, welcome to our world. But the Big Ten folks, you're not going to be able to tell them shit for
No,
quite some time if that
no,
happens.
sir. No. And it's like, bro, because nobody said that this would even be a possibility. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
anybody thought we were going to get to a point before this thing expanded that 2 Big Ten teams were even going to be in. So yeah, the Big Ten folks are going to be insufferable. I will be one of them,
Mm-hmm.
certainly. So excited about the idea, at least, of that happening. But Hack, this was a ton of fun. Hopefully we get to do another one of these shows where we have 2 Big Ten teams to talk about playing in a championship. But If not, hopefully at least one. And hope people enjoyed this one. This was a JP and Hack Show, part of the Field of 12 Media Network, sponsored as always by Bet Rivers Sportsbook. For Christian Hackenberg, I'm Joshua Perry, and we'll check you out soon.